And hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert with you here.
Rev Z right here.
Rev Dr. CC right here.
And this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. It happens every Tuesday at 2 o'clock Mountain Time. Rev Z and I get to share with our special guests. And as we're mentioning, our guest today is Reverend Dr. CC Coltrain. Now, we're going to let her introduce herself to you here in just a second, but I've got to say ahead of time that Reverend Doctor, before you were Reverend Doctor, when you were CC, we were hanging out together at the Salt Lake Center for Spiritual Living, and you have always had a special place in my heart because I have learned so many things from you in those early days. And we were in classes together, and you taught classes that I took, and I got to watch you through your evolution, if you will, through the educational process and into ministerial school. And so you've always been a few steps ahead of me, and I've always appreciated that. And it's great. So we're really, really happy that you're able to be here with us today. Folks, we do want you to know that because of the American holiday, today's program has been pre-recorded. It says July 4th on your screen. It's really late in the week before that we're recording this. So you're welcome to comment and drop a comment in the comment box. We'll see those after the holiday and be sure to respond to you appropriately. So, all right, Reverend CC, let everybody know what do we need to know about you to get our conversation started here today?
Well, Robert, you have a special place in my heart, too, because we did sort of grow up together in the Salt Lake Church, which I first attended in 1986, which just blows me away, but it's true. I kind of stayed for the parties at first, and then all of a sudden I found myself signing up for a foundations class, and then I never looked back, not until I graduated from Holmes Institute and was licensed as a minister for Centers for Spiritual Living. So what do you need to know about me? I was a lawyer prior to becoming a minister. And then I served 15 years as the senior minister of the Dayton Center for Spiritual Living. And for the last 5 years, I've worked with our advanced education, I guess I would call it. It's the ministerial education for Centers for Spiritual Living. For a long time, I was doing the academic side, Holmes Institute, and I'm still doing that. But I also took on, when Dr. Kathy Hearn retired, the direction of the School of Spiritual Leadership, which is the campus-based program in Denver and San Diego and Napa and Los Angeles and Florida and Canada. So, and Mexico, and Kenya. We have campuses all over the place. So that's what I've been doing for a while, and that's what I'm still doing today. I'm the president of Holmes Institute and the director of the School of Spiritual Leadership.
Beautiful. I love that you mentioned, remember Kenya. Kenya's having a conference next winter, January and February, and New Thought Media Network will be there to help support that effort, and we'll be in attendance. So there it is,
flyer.
Everybody's promoting Kenya, and I believe that it's not only going to be a great time as far as an experience, but it's going to be a great time to be able to witness how New Thought is bubbling up in Kenya, because you've lucked right into one of my favorite conversations recently. I think it's really important that we don't try to overlay North American New Thought in places like Kenya or South America or Europe or other places where tradition, history, and the culture are vastly different. And that's what I'm seeing in Kenya is everybody's kind of saying, hey, let us support you in how you want to do it, rather than saying you got to do it our way.
Absolutely. And the same thing is true in Mexico and the Spanish-speaking ministries. They have taken the ministerial training program and adapted it to a more secular, spiritual director kind of role. And the students that come out of that program, we have students from Peru and Mexico and Bolivia and all over the place in the Spanish-speaking community. Spain, they are absolutely some of the most dedicated, creative, spiritual leaders that I know. It's just an amazing thing. And then we let them shape their communities the way they need to be shaped in their environment. And my job is to support the people who are training the ministers in doing what needs to be done with the curriculum, et cetera, to make it work for them. And it's been really wonderful. And the dean of the Kenya campus is an amazing woman. And I'm happy to do anything I can do to further that project in Kenya, because I've witnessed a couple of their students and I'm just blown away. They're fabulous.
Yeah, and you know, you bring up a point. We had a conversation the other day with Dr. Dennis Merritt, and the whole idea with one of the ideas that we talked about, this whole idea of sacred and secular, right? And I think by and large, as we continue to move forward, we're going to have to come up with some very creative and inviting secular intersections for everybody to feel like they're welcome. Because nowadays, the moment you say religion, and it's almost getting close to the moment you say spirituality, people cut off, right? And so, and quite honestly, Ernest looked at this, as I understand, as a way of life. I don't need to separate one or the other. It's just the way I do business, so to speak. It's the way I carry myself, and to be able to have an institute that can put that philosophy out there, put the examples, put the rituals, so that it becomes every day. And I don't need to talk about, well, I'm going to go meditate or I'm going to go pray. That's a foregone conclusion, because that's just the way you live. You don't need to tell me you're going to meditate, because I know you do, or you pray, or you contemplate, or you know, whatever it is. We know you have a set of practices that fit for you. And by allowing the different cultures to do that will satisfy their community is a great idea.
Oh, yeah. And I think we need to take that approach with everything that CSL does, Centers for Spiritual Living does, moving into the future. You know, the pandemic accelerated the progress in this country of a move away from a religion, away from organized.
Well, folks, it would appear we're having a little bit of technical difficulties here today. All right, I think we're back with you, Cece. Good. Things happen with the internet, don't they? They just happen. Anyway, what I was saying is that I think we as an organization have to realize that what we have in New Thought in general is absolutely precious. And it is a way of living that will allow us to get along better in every corner of our lives. You know, we're calmer. We know how to find joy. We understand how necessary it is to try to have balance in our work and personal lives. We know that we have to have fun. We have to take care of ourselves mentally, spiritually, physically, all those kinds of things. We know that it behooves us to be kind and compassionate and generous, because as we teach, there's, you know, you are me, I am you, we are all one. And so what I do out there comes back to my life. And so we have a precious, precious, precious gift here. And I think we have to be really conscious about getting it out to people who might be able to use it, but who are not about to walk into a church or a center for spiritual living even until at least they figure out what it is we do. And so what we have done in the academic side of ministerial training, the Holmes Institute,
sort of get that. And we've put together a new master's program, which begins unrolling fall quarter. And it's called a Master of Wisdom Studies. And it is all about, how do I put this? All the things that Ernest Holmes studied are still in there. He studied psychology and science and philosophy and all of those kinds of things, and religion and sacred texts. But it's in there in such a way that what it is really plumbing the depths of the wisdom of the ages and then synthesizing it for today. And our courses are everything from consciousness studies, which is about all the theories about what consciousness is, because nobody knows, right? Nobody can define it. Is it a product of the brain? Is it the ground of all being from which the brain springs? What is it? We have lots of evidence about how it and the practices that you were mentioning, meditation, contemplation, sacred reading, all that stuff, how they affect it. What happens when it goes haywire? We have a lot of science about that. We also have a lot of philosophical arguments that we explore in that class. We have a series of classes in psychology on wisdom and the soul, cross-cultural psychology. I'm real excited about that one. Creativity itself as a product of our psyches. Mythology, cosmology, and worldview. And then we have a whole section in religion that is sacred texts and sacred wisdom. So people are looking at the texts of most of the world religions and what do they say about this thing called being human and being of the one, of the consciousness of the universe at the same time. How do we do that? Wow. Then we have a whole section on imagination. What is it? What's imagination? The arts, wisdom and technology, wisdom and literature. That's a really fun one. It'll be a deep exploration of Gabriel Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, which is probably one of the most important novels of our time. And then we have a whole brand new section on leadership, wisdom and leadership. I get to teach that one. I'm so excited about it because it's what does the written wisdom of mythology and story and fable tell us about how to be a good leader. And there is theories of leadership. What else we got? Change and innovation, organizational communication. Then what else do we have? We have, I guess that's about it, except for some writing and research and creation of something new for each student. Each student is going to synthesize all that they learn into a new thing. So it's a very exciting program. There are, I think, 12 required classes and 6 electives from about 20 other classes that students can use to kind of shape the program that fits their lives. And we're hoping that we will expand some of these, like expand the leadership section into a whole master's degree itself in conscious leadership.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love that you're bringing that leadership piece into it in a more dynamic way, it seems. And, folks, both Reverend Elzia and I and Dr. Cece are all graduates of the Holmes Institute. So we have intimate experience of what it was like to go through the program, as it's called, as we all call it sometimes, and to go through the program at the various and unique times that we did. And it's really delightful to see that the program continues to evolve and in alignment with the New Thought, Science of Mind, religious science principles. Those terms get a little muddy sometimes, but it's fun to see that. The other thing I heard there is being in the leadership, but also making all of this relevant to contemporary language and contemporary culture.
cross-cultural psychology is sort of the basis of that, but we have a bunch of other things that kind of apply the same approach. We want to be, and I think the new student body is much more cross-cultural and multicultural. And one of the reasons that we did this is because we offer the master's degree to anyone with an accredited bachelor's degree. It is an accredited master's degree. We also have a shorter certificate program, and we're getting more and more students from all walks of life. And so we wanted to make the teachings of science of mind, which are kind of woven all through the classes, coursework, more accessible and more available to more people, because it's very powerful when you start to think about how we can, using psychological and many other tools, really change our whole viewpoint on life, the way we see it, the way we experience it, all of that. I think a lot of people simply don't know that. And so it's, I think, going to have a nice appeal to people who are looking for something that's not a traditional master's degree. It's also the only wisdom studies master's degree that we were able to find in North America. So it's very unique, very multidisciplinary, and I'm way excited about it. I think it's going to be really good. We have wonderful, wonderful faculty members. Dr. Greg Salyer, who is our Chief Academic Officer, is an amazing teacher. Craig Chalquist, PhD, is an incredibly productive. He has a PhD in psychology, a PhD in philosophy, and he's now attending the Wild Earth Seminary. So pretty soon he'll also be ordained and have a Master's of Divinity. He's an incredibly productive and interesting man. Started out teaching, what would you call it? He calls it terranosis. It is a branch of eco-spirituality, but he teaches all sorts of things, and he's very exciting to have on board. We have Louise Talon, who I think probably both of you know. She is a practitioner and a PhD, and she's going to come in and teach leadership and the history of wisdom and cross-cultural psychology. She's also the wife of our spiritual leader, Sonny Cantrell Smith. So interesting group of people with a really interesting group of classes that we hope can help us move people into, move new thought, move science of mind into the future in a way where we have people who understand the concepts in sort of a global way and how they apply to life in general for everybody.
Wow. And, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, Doc, and I'm thinking, boy, Doc is twisting my arm. Like, do I have to go back now and take classes all over again? I'm like, boy, I got to have a talk with Doc. She's twisting my arm pretty tight. And the whole idea, I was sitting here as you were saying that and thinking about when I entered the whole process some 20 years ago. And at that point, the state of consciousness in our environment was holistic programming that we had in terms of how the science and the psychology and the religion all moved together so that the leaders and ministers had that platform to work from. But now, given that we live in an evolutionary world and consciousness and the way it is presented has changed, we now have to do exactly what you guys have already done, is move it to the next level of holistic living. Of now we have all these things integrated together. How do we lead them? How do we shepherd them, if you will? How do we present them to others so that they become, in 20 years, 25 years from now, come up with the next iteration of how we begin to create a platform that's holistic, that gives us the aptitude and the attitude to give us the altitude we need to really be successful in life.
Amen. We have to constantly be evolving and assessing what we're teaching, what we're learning, how we're practicing, in our own lives. so that we're keeping up. One of the things that we found that I knew going into my position as provost, which is where I started in 2018, was that students are way different now than they were when I went through the program 20-ish years ago. You know, they know so much more. They have such breadth of knowledge. I just taught a class in the School of Spiritual Leadership on how to teach science of mind. And the students were brilliant. They brought so much to the table that most of what we did was simply talk with each other and come up with synthetic ideas that put all that together. It was absolutely wonderful. And I think that's what we have to be conscious of, is who are today's students? What are today's issues? You know, today's issues are not the same as they were. We have a giant, ever-growing awareness of the whole issue, for example, of white privilege and racism in our country. And we've been a kind of a science of mind, and I think most New Thought up until recently has sort of come from a privileged position. I understand saying to a group of, you know, middle-class white people, change your thinking, change your life. But if you say that to a group of new immigrants, they're barely trying to survive here. They're trying to get their feet on the ground and understand the rules that they have to play by. And they've got 900 strikes against them. We have 400 years of history weighing on top of the Black community. We have to understand those things, and we have to take them into account. And we have to say, where do we start? Here's what I truly believe. I believe the deep parts of science of mind need to be brought forward, and not the little shallow aphorisms that we've used in the past, and not the you create all this in your own consciousness, because what that has done to countless people is make them feel like they're not enough, because it's not out picturing the way we said it would. You know, what we really have to do is start meeting people really, truly where they are, and offering something that's useful, and then not telling them, you know, like we used to tell them, what's in your consciousness, you know, you cannot do that. We can't do that anymore. And we have to start understanding that life in this human community is extremely complicated. It's extremely complicated. Nobody tried to get COVID, and lots of people died from it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody had a consciousness that they were going to get ill and maybe die. There's so much complicated stuff going on in our world that it's a matter for me, and my thinking anyway, of, okay, whatever happens, I have some tools to meet that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we should be teaching people. And those tools are of the depth of ourselves and our spirit and our deep spiritual nature. We need to cultivate that. And then we need to help them, you know, we need to help people understand how to use the tools that we teach in a way that's real and applicable. Do I believe in all the spiritual truths of the ages? I do. And I also believe that being human, you know, what the Buddha said life is suffering. And he didn't mean life is awful all the time. He meant every human being is going to have suffering at one point or another, or many points in their lives. It's the nature of being human. Right. So how do we build strength for those times of suffering, so that we don't wind up in the suffering of suffering, you know? You know those people, right? They go on with the suffering for years after the initial event. I'd rather get through it as best I can and then move into joy again. And that's really one of the things we have to offer as a way of life that's amazing.
Yeah. And, you know, you brought something to mind there while you were saying that, in that someone asked me the other day, or part of a conversation that came up about social justice and a spiritual community or a spiritual center. And I reflected back that for African Americans, for blacks in this country, the church has always been the center of social justice because it was the only place we could seek or ask for or get any kind of justice. And so, because I've heard people say, "Oh, well, that's not what spiritual living centers aren't to deal with that." But your constituencies, your congregation, your members are dealing with these issues. And if you're telling them this is the way, the truth, and the light, so to speak, and I come here and I can't ask you a question or get any kind of guidance or resolution, then I'm not too sure I want to be a part of that. And we have to begin to work to remedy that so that it becomes a true center where I can come get a lesson, I can come have fun, I can come get a meal, I can come get educated. It becomes the true hub of the community, and with all these different spokes that helps individuals and community itself evolve ever and ever higher in terms of the consciousness and the way we treat mankind and the planet we live on.
Absolutely. Well, y'all know from the minister's listserv that I don't have much patience with those fundamentalists who say we shouldn't be doing any social justice work. Of course we should be. Ernest Holmes even said, you will know what is yours to go out into the world and do. You come from your spiritual practice and you go out in the world and do what's yours to do. Well, I think what's ours to do is to start living our core belief, which is we are all one, right? And so that means we can't have elite people saying, my consciousness is fine, what's wrong with yours? We can't have elite people saying, my job is not to march in solidarity with my brothers and sisters. And they pull out excuses like, I'm not going to fight racism. Well, then don't. Stand for what you believe in, which is equality and justice and equity and inclusion and welcome and hospitality and all those things that we should be offering everybody. So, I get pretty impatient with that attitude that what we're here to do is sit on our meditation cushions. That's what's led to, I think, the entrenchment of the race issues and the gender issues and the sexual identity issues, and also what's happening with the planet. If every one of us took a little care and concern for this common home we have, we can make a difference. But people don't, and they don't, I think, because it takes effort, and I know we're all really, really, really busy, but I find the opportunity and the strength and the motivation in my spiritual practice to take care of my world, which sometimes means, I've been vegan for 20 years because of that reason. I don't want to contribute to what our food production causes. I plant oak trees out in my yard, even though I live in a forest, because oak trees are the best thing I can plant for the critters. I do whatever I can do in my little way to make the planet a better place. And if everybody did that, it's a big deal. It's a big deal if more people do it.
Amen. I feel like I'm flashing back to 20 years ago in some of those early classes that we took, because I remember very specifically Reverend Donald Graves, our teacher at the time, would share that people come into this philosophy with a greater understanding of this philosophy. And every class has a little bit of a greater understanding, and every generation has an inherent better understanding of what it is we teach. And so it's only appropriate that we are now addressing the issues of our day, because the people that are turning to us to say, teach me, have a massively better, they have an equal understanding of this as many of us do coming in the door. And we've got to be there to help usher them to a greater experience, a greater expression of it all. Speaking of which, folks, we've got to take a really quick break to share a greater expression and some greater opportunities that are coming your way here in the world of New Thought. So we're going to be right back with more with Reverend Dr. Cece here on New Thought today. And we're going to let a couple sponsors say hello. So stay with us. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment or two. Be very...
I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Here and now I can see I was made beautifully. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love.
We'd all stop acting like we're strangers if we could see underneath. We are one family, and it don't matter where you come from. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one love, one love, one love. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one love. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one. What if we could rise up?
And we're back with more of New Thought today here on the New Thought Media Network. Our special guest today is Reverend Dr. Cece Coltrain. She's the president of Holmes Institute and so much more. A voice, an influence, a consciousness in the New Thought movement. And that's really what we would like to dig into in our next segment here with you, Dr. Cece, is we like to look at the future and look at the vision. And we know through 20 years plus, and collectively the three of us, well, we won't count up that many years, but our involvement in this philosophy, we know the arc tends towards the good. We know that education and our understanding and our demonstration of these principles can tend towards a greater and greater experience. And as someone that's living on that edge of the now, what you're implementing now in support of what's going to happen in 20 years, where do you see New Thought and the various organizations being in 20 years?
Before I answer that, I have to speak to your INTA ad, the Congress ad. Now, there's progress. It's being held at Sunshine Cathedral, and if you don't know Reverend Durrell, you need to. He's an amazing human, and he's doing amazing work in Florida, and he's very, very much a world that works, especially for the LGBTQIA plus community.
Yes.
He's terrific. I adore the man. So go to the conference. Anyway, the future. I think that we can take a lesson from our spiritual directors in the Spanish-speaking community and the spiritual leaders in Kenya, and recouch, re-language, redo our classes so that they're not based on the idea of a religion that came about years and years and years ago, but are about a philosophy and a way of life, and begin to offer them to the secular world in terms of classes, workshops, etc., that we can advertise to the world and have people go, man, that might help me with my stress level. That might help me with my relationship with my kids. That might help me with my own sense that I'm not enough, whatever it is. I think we have to sort of offer it in ways that will reach the world that doesn't ever go to church. And I'll tell you what my dream is. My dream is that we start doing things with school children about how to get along with people, about how to calm your own upset emotions, not how to stuff them, how to calm them, and convert them, because the world teaches us really well how to stuff them.
Right.
We know, or at least I've learned over a long time, how to have them and just be with them and not have to hurt anyone else in the process. And right now we're in a society that it's a lot about hurting others because you're hurting. And that's, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. And it's hard to deal with. It's hard to know what to do when someone comes at you out of their own pain and their own fear and their own whatever, and wants to hurt you in the mistaken idea that they'll feel better. That's going on everywhere. And I'd love to be able to impart to kids that there's a better way to do things, one that will get you farther and make you happier.
Yeah, and one thing you said there, Doc, real quick, that I think is key is that, I was listening to one of Ken Wilber's books. I think it was The Future Spirituality. And, what you said about trying to get into the everyday life, he makes a point about if we continue just to tell mythic stories, which have their place, no doubt. But that's all exoteric. We need some esoteric stuff of how we create our own mythic stories by using these principles. And if we just continue to rehash old stories and never give people an opportunity to be the heroes and sheroes of their own stories, then we're doing a disservice not only to the philosophy and teachings, but to anyone we come in contact with as well, I think.
That is so fabulously put. Thank you, Elzia. It's so true that when you tell the mythic story as the great truth, you're, in my view, missing the power of the myth. I think it was Pablo Picasso talking about art who said, art is truth that's truer than true, because it shows us things in a way that we don't see them in the common world. Myth is a story that's truer than the mere words of the story. And I think that what we can do with that is amplify, and all of it from, the stories of Moses to the stories of Jesus to the stories of India, the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, to the stories of Buddhism, to the stories of all of it. If we can start saying, here's the story, and let's get under it and look at what the reality behind it is. What human issue are they talking about here? Because it's still true and it's still powerful, which is why I love the wisdom of leadership course that I'm going to teach, because it's about, for example, the story of Icarus, the guy who made the wax wings and then flew up to the sun and fell into the ocean and drowned. There's so much to unpack in that little story about hubris, All these stories have very powerful lessons for us if we treat them. My God, how many millennia and tens of millennia were human beings communicating through story. That is our nature. Our nature is to communicate through story. So let's make the stories important and the message is clear. And I think we can do that. I think we can do that with the things that Ernest Holmes taught. Let's make it, clear and set it up so that they understand that we're not saying, here's how you have to live, or here's what you need to believe, but here's a little piece of wisdom for you.
You just popped something again, Doc, in that when we look at ancient society and we look at the ancient cultures and everything, to a one, right? The way the information was provided to the masses, if you will, was through song, dance, art, or stories, which are all art forms, right?
Yep.
And so really what we're trying to get people to do is to be artists of their own life.
Yes.
And we use these different modalities, song, dance, story, to allow them to immerse themselves in a situation, movies right now, books. I mean, we can go on about the the medium that the story is being told, but we have to begin to teach the individuals and ourselves, in some cases, reteach ourselves, that we have to become a part of the story, and that we have to be able to feel it and see it and taste it and touch it and move through it, so that we can enact it in our lives and allow other people to do the same. I think that just blew me away when you said that.
I couldn't agree more. And so we provide them the tools to make their stories. What's the right word? To inhabit their stories.
And for me, it makes them relevant.
Yeah.
In all of this, I'm reflecting on a guy like Nemo Patel.
Oh yeah.
Who was successful in his own right in business and in things, and had his own experience of a crisis, or of confidence, if you will, or a crisis of faith, and started moving in another direction. And then in some unique way that we could never calculate and could never orchestrate, he bumps into a guy like Daniel Nahmod. And suddenly there is this whole new vibrational and energetic expression of this philosophy. But Nemo doesn't use the words new thought. Nemo doesn't talk about creating posse music. Nemo doesn't talk. He creates socially conscious, social justice, consciousness music, and finds amazing communities to support that, and other artists to support that. His filmmakers are the cutting edge of up and coming young filmmakers, and they're doing all of this not with the lens of a philosophy or the lens of a religion, but doing this because that's what they're here to do. And it's just real, it's true, and they're touching countless different communities that would, again, we're going to say it again, would never come to a Sunday morning church or even a center. But now they've got this new playlist online that is exactly the same message and in different language. It's
and I think that what we have to do as a movement is look for the opportunities to do that in all directions, right. Whether it's saying, what we need, my chief academic officer said the other day, what we need is not artificial intelligence. We need human intelligence. We need the wisdom of the human intelligence and the human heart coming together to heal what needs to be healed, and to provide the opportunities for people to live as fully as they came here to live. And, society tries to prevent that for a lot of people. And so our job is to work to, get that crap out of the way, so that everybody, ourselves included, we have to free ourselves from some internal constraints. And a lot of us have to have some assistance and companionship in freeing themselves of external constraints to step out and be all that you came here to be. That is our charter, in my belief, as individuals. What is it I'm here to give? Who am I here to be? Yeah. I'm always asking that question. I'm always asking it of myself. And now I'm in a different stage of life than I've ever been before. So I'm actually discovering some other things that I'm here to do that I've never even thought about, because now I'm a crone. We had a croning ceremony in my little forest here, and we're all, my sisters and I are all officially crones now. So there's other things to do in that context. And there's other things to do when you have kind of digested, the wisdom of the world, and learned how to separate the story from the meaning of the story, and learned how to separate the stuff that doesn't belong to you from what truly does, which is your own story, your own path, your own life, your own being, your own expression. And that is a lot. And I think we can teach people all of that in ways that we'll get out in the world, rather than, as you said, like Nemo Patel's music, like oh man, how many new thought movies have you seen lately? There are so many that speak our message, right? And how can we do it in a way that breaks it down so that the individual person goes, hey, I want that. I want to do that. I want to take that class.
Yeah. You know, one thing again that just popped up if you were saying that, you know, and I love ancient wisdom, that whole idea of ancient wisdom, because I think they didn't have a lot of the modern stuff to detract them from having a pure, direct relationship with this intelligence, whatever we want to call it. And when we look at the ancient societies and their initiatory programs, one of the foundations of all of them, now they've gotten some bad rap and whatever, but it was a system to get them grounded in art, in math, in storytelling, and look at this toolkit of how you can get in touch with ancient intelligence and move forward so that you can, and so that as you begin to move into different phases of your life, which is what these programs were, these rites of passage programs was from pre-infancy or pre-birth to ancestral realm. They were giving you ideas and putting you in contact with a framework of how to recreate, reinvent, or reimagine yourself as we move through this continuum called life. And I think that's if we can get people to do that, because I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago when I started these teachings. And so if my story is still the same that it was back then, I think I might be missing something.
Well, and that's the whole thing. I agree absolutely. I have to be paying attention to all the lessons that life has given me and all the answers that this philosophy has given me, because it's a lot. My life is so different than I ever imagined it to be. So much better. And if we can remember that, because it's ancient doesn't mean it's any less wise. We are people who compile and store and relate information to other pieces of information. And then we come from that place to relate some other pieces of information, and we just continue to grow. And when we start with, understanding is what I think scripture really is a description through story of the eternal human problems. Think about Jacob wrestling with God, on the shores of the river. How many times have you wrestled with God? I constantly wrestle with God. Had myself put out a joint a few times as a result, and yet always come away with a blessing.
Yes.
It's a metaphor for those times of difficult. I don't want to do it that way, or whatever, however you want to say it. Whenever the ego gets in the way, right? And the ego is an important part of us, but it shouldn't be driving the bus, right, if you ask me. And so we take these old stories and we add them to this compendium of knowledge that each individual has. And the stories that resonate will stick and the others won't. And so that person will take those resonant stories into the context of their own lives. And if we can give them the tools to how to do that, and also how to, all the psychology and spirituality processes we have to help get the ego into its proper seat, and how to listen deeply for that inner wisdom, and how to use the power of the mind, because it is incredibly powerful. I was just reading today on Noom, believe it or not, the diet platform. I'm trying to get into an outfit for a Silmar because I have to speak. Anyway, Noom is talking about, I get to speak. What am I saying? I'm so excited about it, but I need to have something to wear too. Noom was talking about how to use your picture of what you want to get there. It's exactly what we teach.
Yep.
Right. You have a mental equivalent out there and you move, you take one step in that direction and pretty soon you're there. And I think one of you was talking about, I can't remember now, but it'll come back to me, I'm sure. It's so important that we kind of free the core of the teachings, the cores of the teaching from the trappings and offer them up in packages that the world finds. It's like Robert, you said, there's a vast knowledge already of what we teach because it's everywhere. It's even in Noom, but also how we go beyond that, we package them so that people start where they are and then add that esoteric element, that deep element of, my favorite is the mysteries, the ancient mysteries. That one of the last rituals was the spiritual marriage, and it was the marriage of the inner and outer that allowed the most clear, unfettered expression of that soul, that human being, that being to happen. So let's do that. Let's not make sure that somebody knows the 10 core concepts of science of mind, by heart. Let's instead find out what it is that they don't even know them on the exams. I know that. So
20 years in, I don't think 1 is 1, 2 is 1, 3 is 1. Like I don't even remember how I would remember those back in the day. So
right.
So with you, we're going to need to go to a break here shortly, but I can see the wheels gearing in Elzia's head. So Z, you got 30 seconds.
Yeah. So, the one thing that came clear with Doc, when you said Noom, and when I think about these teachings, we are being outmaneuvered with our own teachings by Noom and businesses and all other manner of the so-called secular. They're taking our stuff and outmaneuvering us, and we need to, not that we want them to stop, but we need to take our position as one of the generators of these ideas and how they really begin to get in all areas of your life. I mean,
absolutely.
Absolutely. That sounds like putting a genie back in a bottle sometimes, though, and that's a conversation for another day. So stay with us, folks. We're going to say thank you to our organizational sponsors and individual donors real quick, and we will be back with final thoughts here on New Thought Today, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Yes. Thank you to everyone that makes this network possible and helps us to spread this message, this philosophy, faith, and way of life across the planet. We couldn't do it without you. We wouldn't want to do it without you. So we're very appreciative that you're a part of what we're doing. If you'd like to get involved, please head on over to our website, ntmedia.org. Click on that donate button. We'll get your name on the next version of our video. So, all right. Reverend Cece, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been a great conversation, and I think we found at least 3 or 4 other episodes we could do and long conversations with you. So appreciate you being here. And
I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Folks, do learn more about the Holmes Institute over at their website, homesinstitute.edu. We'll make sure to leave a link in the show notes for today as well. And before we go,
application schedule's coming right, or fall application deadline is coming right up. So, if you have an interest, please contact us and we will give you more information, and hopefully you will come and join us.
Beautiful. And I think people can reach you directly at Coltrain at homesinstitute.edu, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Right. Beautiful. All right. As is our tradition, final thoughts. I'm going to kick it over to Rev Z to get us started here today.
Wow. That's a tough job, and that's normally not the case for me. But I think one of the final thoughts is there's so many, Doc, you've got so much going in my head, but I think it should be figure out how we can become the heroes and sheroes of our own story and begin to live it.
Beautiful.
Whew. Dr. Cece.
Wow. What would I say? Look around, get curious, look around for all the opportunities that we have to be who we came here to be, to spread what's in our hearts in the most loving and compassionate way possible. And I guess just thank you to that which is, for the life that I have now as a result of these teachings.
Not sure I should have left myself for final here today, for the last one here today. But if I want to wrap up this conversation, one of the things that I hear, and one of the things that is very refreshing to me, is that my alma mater is not just doing the same old thing from the same old consciousness, from the same old perspective as, and that's not that anything was wrong when we did those things. It's not that they were wrong when they were there, but it's great to hear of and now be witness to the evolution of this great institution, the Holmes Institute. So again, Dr. Cece, thank you so much for being with us. We'll get you back on the schedule again sometime soon, and trust that you enjoy. Remember, folks, this was pre-recorded, so trust you enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Thanks. Same to you. And I had a blast. So I'm up for another one.
All right.
Thanks.
That's all we got today, folks. Before we go, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.